In 1938, he introduced rearmament. The regular army received new weapons and vehicles, as well as improved salaries and living conditions. The Territorial Army Reserve was reorganized and expanded. Following Germany's takeover of Czechoslovakia, Chamberlain quickly introduced conscription and stepped up the pace of rearmament. He also arranged for the British Expeditionary Force to go to France in September 1939. His political standing, however, had been badly undermined by his earlier policy of appeasement. He had also spurned Russian offers of an alliance, thus paving the way for the Nazi-Soviet pact. His political fate would be sealed by the defeat of the Allied expedition in Norway. On the first day of the German offensive in the West, Chamberlain would be forced to resign. The man who would replace him had been one of his sternest opponents and an arch critic of appeasement. At the outbreak of war, Winston Churchill was First Lord of the Admiralty. He was one of Britain's most experienced politicians, having held 8 cabinet positions in a 40-year career interspersed with frequent spells in the political wilderness. In 1938, he had even considered retiring from public life. Churchill had been one of the fiercest critics of the pre-war policy of appeasement and was absolutely unshakable in his opposition to Hitler. He was largely responsible for planning and directing the Allied campaign in Norway, but escaped serious criticism for its failure. In spite of his great experience, Churchill was only a compromise choice for Prime Minister. Though the support he received was less than wholehearted, he himself had complete self-belief. He would later remark that assuming the leadership felt like walking with destiny. Within a week of defeating Poland, Hitler had issued a directive stating that Germany should launch an attack against France through the Low Countries as quickly as possible. Hitler dismissed his general's objections to this order as defeatist and insisted on the operation going ahead. At once, the German High Command prepared their first plan for the Western Offensive, codenamed Case Yellow. Case Yellow gave the major role to the Army's right wing, Army Group B, which would overwhelm the Belgian forces along the line of the Albert Canal and then push towards the Somme. Army Group A, in the center, would attack through southern Belgium in support, while Army Group C held the Franco-German frontier in a largely static role. Case Yellow was virtually a repeat of the German invasion plan of 1914. Hitler had misgivings about this version of Case Yellow, noting that its proposed advance had to be made across difficult terrain. Worse still, it seemed likely to lead to the sort of static war of attrition he had himself endured in the trenches of World War I. He suggested making an attack against the Allied center. Over the ensuing months, the High Command prepared several minor variations of Case Yellow, none of which quite satisfied him. In any case, The onset of winter forced Hitler to postpone his offensive time and again. The Germans now began studying a fifth and very different version of case yellow, known as sickle stroke. Sickle stroke required Army Group B, now much reduced in size, to attack Belgium and Holland. First, airborne troops would be parachuted into Rotterdam, where they would seize the aerodromes. Paratroops would also be used to secure bridges over Belgium's Albert Canal and to capture the vital fortress of Eben-Emael. Next, the Luftwaffe was to attack airfields in Belgium, Holland and France, destroying enemy aircraft before they even had a chance to take off. Finally, the main body of Army Group B was to commence its advance. Its main purpose was to lure the Franco-British forces into the Belgian lowlands. In the south, facing the formidable fixed defences of France's Maginot Line, Army Group C was to engage its defenders and effect a breakthrough if possible. The main effort was to be delivered by the strongest German force, Army Group A, in the centre, spearheaded by 7 armoured and 3 motorised divisions. Army Group A would attack across the dense forest of the Ardennes through Luxembourg and southern Belgium. Bypassing the Maginot Line, they were to cross the Meuse between Dinant and Sedan, then break out toward the Somme. By so doing, they would drive a huge wedge in the centre of the Allied armies. If all went to plan, sickle stroke could yield a decisive victory. Its very boldness had deterred the High Command when it was first laid before them in November. Since then, there'd been time to perfect its details. When sickle stroke was finally put to Hitler in February 1940, that same boldness appealed to him instinctively. Furthermore, sickle stroke was in line with his own earlier suggestion that an attack might be possible against the Allied centre. Its adoption was thus assured. From that point on, all the deliberations and preparations of the General Staff were geared entirely towards its successful realization. For months on end, its every aspect was carefully rehearsed in elaborate training exercises. By May the 10th, 1940, every German soldier, from the highest rank to the lowest, knew exactly what was expected of him if victory was to be achieved. France's principal system of defense was the Maginot Line. The line was an extensive bulwark of fortifications deemed impossible to breach. This elaborate defensive network contained numerous tank traps, mines, fortified machine gun emplacements, anti-tank, anti-aircraft and heavy field artillery. The forts were all linked by connecting lifts and tunnels. They could supply their own needs of water and power, and the largest could accommodate a garrison of 1,000 men. France had spent a staggering 7,000 million francs in building the Maginot Line, by far the greater part of her overall defense budget. Due to the strength of the Maginot defences, French strategists were certain the Germans would have to repeat their 1914 attack through Belgium and Holland.